Hi everyone. So let's get started right away here. We are continuing on to learning target number 6, except we're shifting gears just a little bit. We're shifting gears from doing something nice for someone to doing something, well, for lack of a better word, mean. If you take a look, we're talking about aggression today. All right, so we want to be focused on what are the variables that contribute to aggression. All right, so Brianna, don't get too excited. There's going to be a lot of this, okay? All right, anyways, aggression by definition is social behavior with the objective to harm physically or verbally. We oftentimes think of aggression as something that is physical, where we're actually going to hurt somebody, like by punching them or something like that. But aggression can also be verbal, all right? So what psychologists are interested in is what would be some contributing factors that will contribute to people being aggressive. Now, if we look at biological influences, aggression does make sense, especially from an evolutionary standpoint, okay? If we think of the fight or flight response, okay, this is a survival mechanism for us. We need to get aggressive so that we don't die, basically, or we need to get aggressive so that we can mate with another creature to perpetuate the species, all right? So you want to put down in your notes that this is a survival and a reproductive trait that has carried on through the generations, of course. What we do know is that the level of aggressiveness does tend to be genetic, all right? Research in selective breeding has shown that we can select certain creatures that are more aggressive, like let's say dogs, for example. We could select 2 dogs that tend to be very vicious and have them breed and create an even more vicious, or likewise we can try to breed out the vicious to make the dog more timid. All right, so this suggests that aggression is something that is genetic or born in us. From twin studies, we can conclude that unprovoked aggression is something that seems to be, oh, the lights just went off. Hold on a minute. All right. Yay, we turn them back on. I guess we don't really need them, but whatever. Okay, so anyways, as I was saying, we were talking about genetics, so yes, that's right. Okay, so from twin studies, unprovoked aggression, or like your demeanor to be more aggressive, almost if you want to think of it as personality, tends to be something that's genetic. But how you respond when you're provoked, that tends to be environmental or something that we have learned. All right. From a neurobiological standpoint, when it comes to aggression, what do you think? Which neurotransmitters are we seeing here? I'll give you a minute to think about it. Well, it's fight or flight, obviously. So we're talking about norepinephrine here. You want to put down in your notes. You also want to write down that hormones are being used as well. All right. Specifically, aggression, testosterone. Yes. Good. I'm glad you guessed that. So sucky doing this to no one. Oh, social facilitation. I would be much more dynamic in front of real humans. Okay. Anyways. We also want to realize that aggression is going to be happening in the limbic system, all right? So this emotion of aggression happens in the limbic system, makes sense, specifically in our amygdalas, okay? But it can also trigger in the hippocampus memories of how we responded before. But it also comes into our frontal lobes to be decided upon how we should act. So we'll get a feeling and then we decide if we're going to be aggressive or if we're not going to be aggressive. So we have some sort of a control in the situation in some instances. All right, moving on. This is where gossip comes into play. When you're thinking about being aggressive in an indirect way, which would be verbal. A direct way would be physical. all right? Now, if you're in the classes where you haven't read the gossip reading right now, you should read the gossip reading, and you should make notes in your note packet as you're reading. What are the factors for why we gossip? You should have about 4 or 5 factors when you get done with the reading. If you're wondering where to find this reading, you can go into Edmodo, and in your Social Psychology Unit 4 folder, there is a PDF document called, well, you guess it, Gossip Reading. Go ahead and read through this. It's only 4 pages long. It's technically 3.5, all right? And write down those answers to why we gossip on your notes packet. Then we'll go through them on Monday, okay? You may pause me now. All right. For those of you who've already read it, we are going to move on. What are some psychological influences that explain aggression? Now, there's this hypothesis out there, and we have to remember that hypotheses are not theories. There's a difference, okay? Theories have been proven over and over again. Hypotheses work out some of the time, okay? All right, here's what this hypothesis says. Get ready to write. The hypothesis says frustration causes aggression. So anytime we feel frustrated, that could be a reason why we're feeling aggressive. Now, you can already guess, all right, why this is a hypothesis, but let's think about this. There is some merit to this hypothesis. When you get frustrated, do you find yourself becoming aggressive? Like I see Brogan, and Brogan will be playing on the iPad, and he'll be playing some game, and he'll lose, and what does he do? He's lost because he's lost, so he's frustrated, so he takes the iPad, he picks it up, and he tosses it across the room. Aggression, right? Okay, so this makes sense. When we're frustrated with somebody, we could tend to be aggressive with them. But this isn't always the case, which is why it makes it a hypothesis. You want to put down in your notes, the reason why this isn't always the case is because sometimes people become passive when they're frustrated, and they give up instead of becoming aggressive, okay? All right, another thing that is a factor or a variable in aggression is cognitive determinants, all right? And this is like how we think about a situation, if that makes sense, okay? Are we able to feel the aggressive emotion in us and then shut it down with our frontal lobe and say, there's probably a better way that we can handle this? Sometimes we can, sometimes we can't, okay? An interesting study that was done is how weapons tend to affect a situation. And they found that when weapons are present in a situation, that tends to cause aggression automatically. Now, we saw this in the video yesterday. As soon as those kids brought baseball bats in to like hitting those homeless people, all of a sudden it caused more aggressive behavior in the passerbys or in the bystanders, if you will. Kind of an interesting way to tie that to what we learned yesterday. Anyways, very interesting. All right. Also, what psychologists have found is that we can learn to be aggressive. And this is what we call observed learning or observational learning. Now, this term was coined by a guy by the name of Albert Bandura. Wow, this is really hard to do. B-E-R... Oh my God. Okay, Bandura. You are... A. Okay, so let's not do this again. Anyways, this observational learning study that he did was what was called the Bobo doll experiment. And I will show you the Bobo doll experiment here in 1 second. You should write that down too, by the way. Okay, hold on a minute. Let me explain this. All right, so here's what's going down. I gotta turn up the volume. Hold on a minute. I'm back. Okay, so here's what's going on. Bandura put a bunch of kids into a room with like all kinds of toys. Like I want you to think of like a daycare room, okay? Anyways, and he had this Bobo doll in there, and the kids had never seen a Bobo doll before, all right? Anyways, Then he took the kids out and he had them watch through this like two-way mirror, and he sent a bunch of adults into the room, and the adults start beating the crap out of this Bobo doll, which is what you're going to see right now. And then they send the kids back in, and the kids initially, who had really done nothing with the Bobo doll, come in and start beating the crap out of the Bobo doll. Watch.
Kicked it repeatedly. Threw it down and beat it. It was once widely believed that seeing others vent aggression would drain the viewer's aggressive drive. As you can see, exposure to aggressive modeling is highly cathartic. Exposure to aggressive modeling increased attraction to guns, even though it was never modeled. Guns had less appeal to children who had no exposure to the aggressive modeling. The children also picked up the novel hostile language.
Okay, so I think you get the idea here. Yes, I hope so. All right. So this is kind of the monkey see, monkey do kind of concept, which has some kind of scary ramifications, especially for things like domestic violence, where kids grow up in an environment like that, and then they're much more likely to perpetuate that cycle in their own homes when they become adults. Because they learn that that's how you handle the situation. Okay? All right. And last but not least for this category is personality. What psychologists have found is that people who have low conscientious personalities, all right, they're not rule followers, people who are highly neurotic, meaning they worry a lot, okay, and people who have low levels of agreeableness, and we already talked about this with the helping behavior, but this is low levels of agreeableness you want to put down in your notes. All of these personality traits are more likely to be aggressive than other personality traits, which makes sense. All right, and then last but not least are sociocultural influences that contribute to aggressive behavior. Get ready, Brianna. Ah, fancy, huh? All right, what psychologists have found is that aggression is more common in some cultures, especially cultures, you want to put this down in your notes, that have an emphasis on masculine pride, or cultures that have an emphasis on maintaining the family honor. All right, let me give you an example of both of them, okay? Masculine pride, especially where masculine pride, you don't want to threaten your manhood, okay? They did this study in the United States, and what they found was that Southerners were more likely than Northerners to be aggressive when honor is at stake. What they did was they took men from either the North and the South, and they required them to walk down a hallway. And when they walked down a hallway, they passed another man who bumped into them and then quietly called them a derogatory name. The Southerners were more likely than the Northerners to think that their masculine reputation had been threatened, and they became angry and aggressive toward the individual. Likewise, in cultures where family honor is important, aggression is more common as well. There was a female woman, yes, that would be obvious, right? Anyways, in 2009, a woman in Jordan was stabbed by her brother. This is the aggressive act here, all because his sister was pregnant and she was leaving her husband, and she was seeing other men, and he felt like his family name was being dishonored, and so to protect the family name, he had to kill her. Okay, so this makes sense that it would be more predominant in some cultures than in others. The psychologists have also done, oh my gosh, a crazy amount of studies on media violence and how that can cause an increase in aggression. Most often we see this with children, okay, where playing violent video games or being exposed to violent acts on television can cause aggression to increase in children. But to teenagers and to adults, it can make us less sensitive to real life violence and more likely to engage in delinquent acts. So if you're interested in this, you can go discard. Okay, you can go to videogamesprocon.org and you can read about the pros and the cons for if people believe that violent video games causes violent behaviors. It's actually kind of interesting studies that have gone on about this. All right. So how can we reduce aggression? We can monitor our activities. We can think about our actions before we do them. All right, we can really try to engage the frontal lobe and not just act with the limbic system. We can reward empathy when we see it in people to help reduce aggression so that people really think about what it's like to be the other person that they're being aggressive towards. That can help to reduce aggressive behavior. And then, of course, watch our own behaviors in front of children because of the monkey see, monkey do concept. All right. So that leads us to that question. And you can make that decision on your own because, like I said, the verdict is still out on that. So we are moving into love in our next, on Monday. And that brings us to the same essential question. Describe the variables that contribute to attraction. So an interesting article that I'd like us to read as an assignment, if you go to Edmodo, I have a link in Edmodo where you can read 5 weird ways love can affect your body. And then in your Edmodo folders, I have attached, come on, I have attached a reading analysis to go along with the link. What I want you to do is write down at least 4 ways that love can affect your mind and your body, and then answer the part 3 question for Monday. All right, have a good weekend. Make good choices.